When it comes to software, how you build something is every bit as important as what you build. And honestly, one of the biggest decisions you're ever going to make comes down to two very different blueprints, the monolith versus microservices. So yeah, let's get right into this really fundamental choice. Okay, let me put it this way. Are you building a single massive skyscraper, where everything is under one roof? Or are you designing a whole neighborhood of connected buildings, a sprawling city of smaller, specialized parts that all have to work together? That's really the core question we're going to dig into. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the classic, the age of the monoliths. Then we'll look at when those monoliths start to crack under pressure. After that, we'll check out the new blueprint, microservices. But it's not all perfect, so we'll cover the price of that independence. And finally, we'll wrap it up by talking about how to make the architect's choice.
Right, so first up, the age of the monolith. This is the all-in-one foundation. And honestly, before microservices were a thing, pretty much everything was built this way. It was the go-to, the traditional starting point for most apps out there.
So what exactly is a monolith? Well, think of it as an application where all the components, we're talking user authentication, the shopping cart, payments, the whole shebang, they're all built and deployed as one single unified unit. Everything's kind of smushed together in one big code base. And look, there's a really good reason people start with a monolith, right? For one, it's easy to develop because all the code lives in one repository. It's also simple to deploy. You've only got one application, one pipeline to worry about. Debugging? Way more straightforward because you're just tracing issues inside that one app. And maybe best of all, it's high performance. There's no network lag between the different parts because they're all sitting right next to each other. But here's where the story takes a turn. As your app gets more successful, as it grows, that all-in-one strength, it can actually become a huge weakness. The problems of scale and speed start to creep in, and that solid foundation, it starts to show some pretty serious cracks. Yeah, it's this classic downward spiral. First, your application just grows and grows. New features get added and the codebase gets bloated. Then, your release is slow, way down. Why? Because even a tiny little change requires you to test and redeploy the entire application. And finally, scaling becomes a nightmare, and it gets super expensive. Think about it. A traffic spike hits just one feature, say the shopping cart, and you have to scale the whole massive application just to handle it. Oh, and the growing pains, they don't stop there. You start getting team bottlenecks with developers accidentally stepping on each other's toes inside that huge codebase. You get technology lock-in. The whole app is stuck on one single tech stack, for better or worse. And then you hit those awful dependency conflicts, where one feature needs one version of a library and another feature needs a different one. It becomes a giant mess. So, out of all that pain, a new blueprint emerged. This is where microservices come in. Instead of that one skyscraper, we start thinking about building an entire application city. So what are they? Well, a microservices architecture breaks down a big application into a collection of smaller, independent services. The key here is that each service is in charge of a specific business function. So you'll have one for payments, one for user accounts, one for the shopping cart. You get the idea. Okay, but if they're all separate, how do they actually talk to each other? Well, a big chunk of the time, it's through API calls. That's synchronous. One service asks another for something and waits for the answer. Then you've got message brokers, which are asynchronous. It's like sending a message and not needing an immediate reply. And finally, there's the service mesh, which is kind of like a dedicated traffic controller for all your services, making sure everything gets where it needs to go. And this is where it gets really good, because the advantages here directly fix the problems we saw with monoliths. You can do targeted scaling, so you only scale the services that actually need more resources. Your teams get autonomy. Small, dedicated teams can own their own services. You get tech flexibility. If you want to use Python for machine learning service, go for it. Releases are way faster, and the system is more reliable. If one service fails, it doesn't bring the whole house down. Okay, so it sounds perfect, right? Well, not so fast. This independence comes at a cost. We're talking about the price of independence. Because while microservices solve old problems, they absolutely introduce new complexities. You see, while microservices are powerful, they add a ton of operational overhead. You're not just managing one thing anymore. Now you have to manage, deploy, and monitor dozens, maybe even hundreds of different services. It's a huge shift in complexity. And then there's the whole question of how you manage the code. You could go with a monorepo, where all your services are in one big repository. That makes it easier to share code and refactor things, but it can get slow. And if someone breaks the main branch, it blocks everybody. The other option is a polyrepo, where each service gets its own separate repository. This gives you true independence and simpler pipelines, but it makes it way harder to make a change that affects multiple services at once. All right, so after all of that, we get to the big question, making the architect's choice, monolith or microservices? And the answer, as you've probably guessed, is it depends. Let's just look at the scorecard here. When it comes to initial development speed, the monolith is way faster. Operational complexity, it's low for a monolith. But when you talk about scalability, microservices are precise and efficient, whereas monoliths are difficult and costly. And for team independence, it's low with a monolith, but high with microservices. It's a classic trade-off. So what's the general rule of thumb here? Honestly, it's this. Start with a monolith. Unless you are absolutely certain you are going to have massive, massive scale from day one. Don't over-engineer a solution for a problem you don't have yet. And I love this quote from Alex Hyatt because it really hits the nail on the head. Most applications, even Netflix, started as a monolith. Solve for scaling problems when you actually have them. I mean, think about that. Even Netflix, they didn't start with this complex city of services. They built the skyscraper first. So, it all comes back to you and your next big idea. Are you laying the foundation for a skyscraper, aiming for that speed and simplicity right out of the gate? Or are you planning a whole city of services, building for that massive scale and flexibility from the very beginning?